ecological reserves providing access to two very different California landscapes. A program to provide real-world research opportunities to computer science students. The Mediterranean climate ecosystem and what makes it so special. But first, the StarCAVE, all on this edition of OnBeyond.
Welcome to Inside Science TV.
Saved.
And program.
The holodeck seen here in the hit TV show Star Trek allows crew members to enter and explore virtual worlds. Now, Jürgen Schultz, an expert in science visualizations, along with his colleagues, has created a new, totally immersive 3D virtual reality room called the StarCAVE.
The StarCAVE is a virtual reality system which consists of 15 screens all around the user. It's completely 360-degree immersive, and it can generate 3D images anywhere in the space that the user looks at. The user wears 3D glasses and a tracking system so that the computer knows where the user is, and you're using a 3D input device to control the environment.
The StarCAVE creates environments scientists once could only imagine. Users can walk around virtual buildings to improve their design or explore molecules to unlock their secrets. The room displays 68 million pixels, and while your video game system is just one graphics processor, StarCAVE uses 34, making it over 30 times more powerful than the PlayStation 3 or the Xbox 360.
We're currently working on making the technology of the StarCAVE more available to a larger market. And one way to do this is to utilize 3D television screens to offer systems that allow people at home to do virtual reality in their living room.
Turning science fiction into science fact. I'm Josh Lebowitz reporting.
Inside Science TV. If you enjoyed this edition, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. 2 new science stories every week. Powered by the American Institute of Physics.
The University of California Natural Reserve System is a network of protected wildlands across California. The system provides places to educate students and the public about the natural world and for scientists to conduct research in wild landscapes. Each reserve offers access to a unique environment. 2 of the reserves administered by UC Riverside, the James San Jacinto Mountains Reserve and the Sweeney Granite Mountains Desert Research Center, demonstrate just how different these sites can be. The James San Jacinto Mountains Reserve is located about a mile high just west of Palm Springs. The area hosts plants characteristic of several regions, including the Sierra Nevada, the coast, and the desert. It is embedded within much larger natural and scenic areas administered by the U.S. Forest Service. The James Reserve staff also manages the Oasis de los Osos. Located in a desert pass between Riverside and the Coachella Valley, this 160-acre reserve is fed by a perennial stream. Though the James Reserve is relatively small at 29 acres, it hosts an impressive variety of plants and animals. These include 18 species of reptiles, such as this western rattlesnake, mammals such as deer and mountain lions, and 125 species of birds. The principal facility at the James is the Trailfinder Lodge, which has classrooms and visitor accommodations. The James Reserve was crucial in pioneering the use of remote sensing technology for environmental research and teaching. Its wireless network covers the whole property. Local habitat conditions are tracked via microweather stations and webcams. This camera, for example, is stationed over a manzanita bush. It automatically records any pollinators that visit the heart-shaped flowers. The entire reserve is off the grid. All of the electricity needed to run the sensors, lights, computers, and other electronics comes from solar panels. The network allows anyone with internet service to eavesdrop on reserve wildlife. Nest box cameras, for example, offer views of hungry chicks begging for food inside the nest. There's even a microphone set up to listen to the forest around the clock. The The proximity of the James Reserve to the UC Riverside campus, its comfortable housing, and its habitat diversity make it an excellent site for introducing students to the natural world. The Sweeney Granite Mountains Desert Research Center is located within the 5 million acres of the Mojave Desert. The region is still undeveloped and wild compared to most other parts of Southern California. The reserve is roughly 14 square miles in size, making it the second largest in the Natural Reserve System. About 10% is owned by the university. The remainder is operated under an agreement with the National Park Service as part of the 1.5 million acre Mojave National Preserve. The staff also administer a satellite reserve in the Sacramento Mountains. This area is known for its dense stands of teddy bear cholla. The Granite Mountains were once part of an ancient chain of volcanoes. Weathering along the rock joints and fractures has produced white pinnacles, precariously balanced boulders, and maze-like corridors. Rugged upland canyons support water-loving cottonwoods and willows, but also dry-adapted live oaks, yuccas, and cacti. Its steep inclines evolve into broad bajadas, or sloping sediment aprons. These are dominated by creosote and burrow bush. The Granite Mountains are situated at the juncture of 3 deserts: the Mojave, the Sonoran, and the Great Basin. As a result, the reserve is home to an unusually diverse mixture of plants and animals. Reptiles at the reserve include the threatened desert tortoise, the coach-whip snake, and the long-nosed leopard lizard. Resident mammals include ring-tailed cats, which prowl rocky areas at dawn and dusk, and desert bighorn sheep. In previous centuries, water concentrated around the base of the mountain range attracted a large population of Native Americans. The mountains are dotted with ancient habitation sites and rock art. Most reserve facilities are nestled into the broad wash known as Granite Cove. The Allenson Center and Library is the reserve's central hub. Built in 1992, it was constructed largely by volunteers using donated and recycled materials. The center includes a laboratory, specimen collections, and visitor accommodations. Researchers who use the reserve range from biologists to earth scientists to artists. Many work on the reserve itself, while others use it as a base while commuting to sand dunes, lava flows, and other features in the surrounding desert. The nearest town is located about 2 hours away. This makes reserve housing, telecommunications, and other amenities critical for scientists working in this vast and wild region. As with all of the sites in the Natural Reserve System, the Sweeney Granite Mountains Reserve is protected for the long term. This policy attracts scientists who know that their research plots and equipment won't be disturbed. For teachers, the Granite Mountains Reserve is a wonderful place to bring students. It regularly hosts both high school and college classes from around the world. Over 30,000 students have visited the reserve's Kenneth S. Norris Camp facility alone. A few UC classes have been coming to the reserve for decades. For students, the chance to leave the city and explore the wilderness can be a transforming experience. Holding a live snake for the very first time, or seeing a wild kangaroo rat close up, helps them appreciate the wonders of the natural world. That's the story of 2 very different reserves. One nestled beneath the shade of mountain forests, the other a remote outpost amid a parched desert. Despite their many differences, they share one important factor. Both are united by the mission of the Natural Reserve System, to contribute to the understanding and wise stewardship of the Earth.
This is the S number and this is the P number, right? So S, P. So
I immigrated from Iran 5 years ago. I always wanted to immigrate because in my country, there isn't enough room for a woman to grow as an individual, to study and to do research.
Usually when you do a clinical trial, you have randomized.
In one of our classes, our professors started talking about ERSP program and told us that it's a great research opportunity.
So that's why most of the drug cannot pass the clinical trials.
ERSP is a team-based, scaffolded research experience for early undergraduates in computer science. The idea was to find some faculty mentors who are willing to let groups of undergraduates into their lab who would be supported not only by them, but also through this central structured mentoring team to help give these early undergraduates a little more support that they needed as they were getting involved in research.
So if I do X4, what's going to happen?
My project deals with making a game out of a very complicated computational problem called software verification. Our professors and our advisors built this game on Facebook, and it was not very accessible because you had to have a Facebook account to play it, and it was built for a computer. And so what my team and I did was that we first built it on a mobile phone, and the second thing that we added was to introduce a multiplayer mode on it, and so you can basically challenge your friends to play the game with you.
We'll just do the comparative study, single player versus multiplayer.
Software verification is basically trying to make sure that the softwares that are being produced are bulletproof. Everything that you do is kind of guided by software. So if you're driving a car and you're in an accident, the airbag should pop out. Now that is something that's been coded into the car to do. And so we need to make sure that it works perfectly fine. And if it doesn't, either it's gonna pop out even when it doesn't need to, or it won't pop out when it does need to.
You're gonna have smaller things that's like pedestrians.
The project that I'm working on is building reinforcement learning environments in order to evaluate and benchmark reinforcement learning algorithms. So the agent is a car, and basically the agent drives the car to try to reach a target while avoiding obstacles.
So then for these lanes, would they be physical blocks?
Our environment adds obstacles that the car has to avoid, and normally in everyday life, you have a lot of these constraints. You have to drive while stopping at stop signs, while not crashing into other cars. And while a reinforcement learning algorithm today might be really good at just steering the car to get to a target, it's not so good at doing this while also abiding by the constraints.
And people have tried to investigate in the context of microbiome.
Our research is more bioinformatics related, and it is one of the most interesting things that I think I could have done. What we are doing right now is that we are looking for fundamental rules of nature. We are working on microbiome. Microbiome is what lives within us on nature everywhere. There are a great amount of microbiome data available to everyone. And up to now, people have been looking at these information in different ways, usually using really complex mathematical relationships. But what we're doing is that we're using those same data, but we're applying a very, very simple mathematical rules to come up with clear hypotheses that can give us universal rules that would exist anywhere between two microbes. As of right now, we have found multiple really interesting relationships that are related to food poisoning and how it can be inhibited, hopefully. And we have the ability to take that into lab and confirm our hypothesis, which is something that do not exist usually in this field.
Because this is a funded project.
So in addition to the faculty mentor from the research team, they're mentored by a central mentoring team, including myself as the program director and a graduate student assistant. We provide more of the day-to-day, hands-on, just standard mentoring that early research students need.
I think it's very important for undergraduates to have an idea of how to do all the presentation and posters and stuff, and also all the technical details like code or the different mathematical formulas they need to know about. Because regardless of whether you go to the industry or you stay in academia, you will need to own a product end-to-end someday.
It was important to me to target ERSP at students from underrepresented groups, is that those students generally have less experience before college. And then on top of that, because they're in the minority, they might feel less comfortable approaching professors to try to get these research opportunities. So they're kind of doubly hindered in their ability to get involved in research.
I would say that the biggest benefit is the amount of confidence that it gave me in my own skills and the way I present myself to other people. And so before I was a part of this program, it felt like I was a part of this huge university and I was just a student here, and I didn't know where I stood. But after being a part of the program, I realized how important it is to challenge yourself, and I realized that the things that I was doing, even if it was just writing a piece of code that somebody has already written, how it's benefiting me and my understanding.
ERSP has been expanded to 3 other universities. One university has already implemented a year of ERSP, so that's UC Santa Barbara. And they said they've been really surprised with how well the program works. You know, this idea of engaging sophomores in research is a little bit out there. People take a little bit to warm up to the idea that sophomores could really do something meaningful in a research project. And I think they've been pleasantly surprised by how much the students have been able to do and how well the structure of the program works. The initial funding for ERSP came from the NSF. That was our launch funding, our pilot funding. And since the program's been running now for 5 years, that funding is finished. I've been fortunate that the department has been supportive of kind of bridging the efforts and keeping it going. But what's going to be really important for the program's future is finding a way to financially support it as we move forward.
I get it. That makes a lot of sense. I love it. That's great.
The thing that I really like the most about being involved in this program is to see the students blossom. They spend a year doing research and they get to learn and they get to explore the ideas. And at the end of it, they come out with confidence, with pride, and with excitement about research. And I think that's really a wonderful, wonderful thing to see.
When we started back in September, I had no idea that we would be presenting something like this today. I am a totally different person in terms of my knowledge, in terms of the things that I can do. I could not believe that we could accomplish this much within a year. I now have more hope to continue doing research in future. And it gave me the confidence to go on. It's been something that I always wanted to do, but I knew over there, my chances are pretty low, almost 0. So all these years, my family and I, we've been trying to find a way to come out and find the opportunity to grow. It's been hard, but it's worth it. And I think I've been reaching what I've been looking for all these years.
The Mediterranean Basin is a storied region, home to miles of sun-warmed beaches, fabulous wines, and bustling cities. It's been a cultural crossroads since the dawn of civilization. What first attracted people to the basin, then convinced them to stay, was surely the mild weather. Here, the 4 seasons are compressed into 2. Hot summers bring clear, dry skies. Cool, but not frigid winters deliver life-giving rain. This Mediterranean climate offers a long growing season and comfortable living temperatures. The results? Rich crop harvests and tremendous natural bounty. The temperate conditions of the Mediterranean can also be found in a handful of other places. Much of California and northern Baja California. The central coast of Chile. Southwest and parts of South Australia. And the Cape region of South Africa. Thanks to their similar climates, these regions have much in common. Understanding what features they share, what problems they face, and what is unique about each is helping people preserve these landscapes for the future. All 5 of the Mediterranean climate regions experience relatively even temperatures throughout the year and receive the majority of their precipitation as rainfall over just a few months. These warm, mostly frost-free regions are powerhouse producers of lemons, strawberries, avocados, tomatoes, and other high-value crops. Some, such as olives, originate from Mediterranean climes. Others, such as citrus and almonds, flourish in the relative warmth and seasonal rain. Wine grapes, too, love hot, arid summers and snow-free winters. It's no wonder that all 5 Mediterranean climate regions have major wine industries. All of these lands are on the western coasts of continents and adjacent to large bodies of water. The oceans and seas help to moderate land temperatures. Less obvious are the atmospheric forces that divide the Mediterranean calendar into wet and dry seasons. Each of the 5 regions is located near a high-pressure cell that hovers over an ocean. These cells move toward the poles in summer, pushing storms away from land. Jet streams shift the cells back towards the equator in winter, bringing storms near land again. Mediterranean climate regions are also hothouses of biological diversity. Though these areas cover only 2.2% of Earth's dry land, they harbor 16% of all known plant species. Only tropical rainforests rival their diversity. The Mediterranean climate can be stressful. For plants, a lack of water or cool temperatures limit growth for much of the year. Because Mediterranean region organisms face similar conditions, many have evolved similar characteristics. Shrubby, evergreen plants are widespread in all 5 areas. Their small, leathery leaves keep water loss to a minimum, helping plants survive long summers without rain. In the Mediterranean, maquis flora includes cork oaks, olive trees, and heath. The matorral of Chile is home to wine palms. Also found here is quillay, the soapbark tree. The chaparral of California includes live oaks, manzanitas, and chamis. The fynbos of South Africa features proteas, pelargonium, the plants we know as garden geraniums, and ericas. Australian quangon includes many types of banksias, sundews, and hakeas. Most Mediterranean ecosystems have also evolved with periodic fires. Many plants in these systems have traits that are advantageous in fire-prone environments, including root crowns that resprout after a blaze, shedding seeds after a fire, and germination stimulated by smoke or ash. The 5 Mediterranean climate regions also face a similar suite of problems. Invasive species may pose the greatest threat. Exotic plants can turn into landscape-devouring weeds when transplanted into new ecosystems. The fast-growing Monterey pine, imported to Chile as a source of lumber, has become the dominant forest tree in coastal areas. The golden wattle, Australia's national tree, is marching its way across South African fynbos that has been prevented from burning. And black mustard, native to the Mediterranean basin, is engulfing entire hillsides throughout California. People have had an even greater impact on Mediterranean landscapes by flocking there to live. The qualities that made the Mediterranean basin so alluring to early people have swelled human populations in all 5 Mediterranean climate regions. The migrants have built some of the world's most cosmopolitan cities: Cape Town, South Africa; Santiago, Chile; San Francisco, California; Rome, Italy; and Perth, Australia. But those cities have come at a heavy price for the environment. Today, more than 40% of the world's Mediterranean-type ecosystems have been devoured by cities or converted to farmland. Little of the remaining valuable open space has been protected. To put this in perspective, of all endangered tropical rainforest, half has been preserved from development. In Mediterranean areas, it is much worse. Of all the original Mediterranean ecosystem habitat, only 1/8 of that habitat has been preserved from development. Populations in Mediterranean climate areas skyrocket further during vacation season. Their balmy weather draws tourists like a magnet. While there are roughly 300 million permanent residents of the Mediterranean basin, an estimated 220 million tourists also visit each year. Amenities for vacationers, such as resorts and golf courses, consume even more local land and resources. But perhaps the most precious resource in Mediterranean climate areas is fresh water. Many of these regions already struggle to make water supplies stretch through months of summer drought. To make matters worse, global warming is expected to make Mediterranean ecosystems hotter and drier in the future. That means drought, heat waves, and their associated threat, wildfire, are expected to become more extreme from here on out. 4,000 years ago, the combination of climate change and intensive farming transformed the Fertile Crescent, cradle of civilization, into a parched desert. Given climate change forecasts and current agricultural practices, today's Mediterranean climate lands could face a similar fate. Understanding how these areas are vulnerable is a first step towards preventing that scenario. People are protecting wildlands by setting aside parks and reserves, battling invasive species, conserving urban water use, and controlling erosion. Together, these and other efforts might be enough to maintain the health of Earth's treasured Mediterranean climate landscapes.